Francis Nurmagomedov has arrived tonight. This fight was amazing to watch, especially for a Francis Ngannou fan. I mean, to see his evolution unfold in one fight like this really tells you the lengths he's went through in his career to get to this point. I mean, Ngannou back in like 2018 would never fight anything like this, and his cardio would never been something like this before. He's worked so hard to get to this point, and now he finally has the leverage to continue his career to whatever future he desires. His wrestling in the fight was phenomenal, and it was something I was questioning before the fight in my prediction video and my breakdown. I was always questioning how Ngannou's wrestling would impact the fight because we never really had a good grasp of how good it actually was. But we do know that he tried it against Stipe and took him to the ground. We also didn't know where Gane's takedown defense was, as barely has anyone ever shot on him. But now we know. Both guys are actually pretty good grapplers. Ngannou showed to be the better wrestler and grappler in the fight, and just fundamentally a lot more sound, whereas Ciryl Gane risked so many submissions. He gave up a whole position in the 5th round that costed him the entire fight. And it wasn't just the heel hooks in that round. You could look at the 4th round and you could look in the 3rd round. Every time he got taken to the ground was because he was attempting a submission. And it shows a difference in fight IQ. And that is such an important difference in the fight. Francis Ngannou is a lot more experienced than Gane is. He's been at this level for a long time now. He's been fighting in the UFC for years. And he showed the kind of fight IQ that someone as young in the game as Ciryl Gane probably would not be able to grasp until a couple more years. At the stage that Ciryl Gane is at right now, Francis Ngannou was a completely different fighter as well who made many mistakes in the cage. Gane is a little bit too risky. He gave up position going for the heel hook in the 5th round, and even in the 4th round, when Ngannou had his back, he attempted to roll for a knee bar. And for that, he got taken to the ground again, and also the Kimura attempts, instead of trying to just stuff the takedown drive in underhooks, cross faces, and all that stuff, he would instead focus on getting submissions. That was the biggest problem for Gane in this fight. As safe as he is in the striking department, he's the complete opposite when it comes to grappling. He has a good amount of submission wins in his career and probably fell in love with it because whenever he attempted, he would secure it. But against Ngannou, who showed to have better submission defense, which is something a lot of people aren't talking about, it wasn't just Gane failed on the submissions. Francis Ngannou also showed how good he is defensively against these kind of submissions. Part of it might be because of how strong he is and he could power his way through, but for an example, when Gane was going to roll for the knee bar, Ngannou saw it immediately and dropped and sprawled. As soon as he saw that Ciryl Gane was going for the Kimuras, Ngannou would take him down the other direction to get himself out of the threatening position. This is something that Daniel Cormier also acknowledged during the fight. Gane never had the position to secure the Kimura, but that was because of Francis Ngannou. The takedowns were absolutely beautiful as well. Besides the first one was just a bulldozing slam, the double leg that he got, the outside trip that he got, and even the kick out whizzer landing on Ciryl Gane's head might have caused some damage there. Because after that, Gane started to fight a little bit differently. I don't know if it was him gassing out because of all the grappling exchanges, but we cannot overlook how hard he felt on his head from that whizzer. And remember, these two guys are giant heavyweights. There's a lot of weight coming down on Ciryl Gane's head. You also go on the grappling exchanges on the ground here. One great moment you saw from Francis Ngannou was when he almost got into full mount. Ciryl Gane sat up, breaking Ngannou's posture a little bit, but then immediately Ngannou locks down, goes behind Gane's back, and grips onto the wrist. This is almost like a Dagestani handcuff, and what it's doing here is it's forcing Gane to only turn and move one direction, and then is immediately giving up his back. Without Gane's left underhook, it's the only way he can really move from this position. Now against the cage, things could have got a lot more dicey for Ciryl Gane, but Francis Ngannou gets the first hook on the leg that's away from the cage. You normally want to get the close side fence hook so the opponent cannot kick out the way Gane does right here. Notice how Ngannou gets the far side fence hook and Ciryl Gane simply kicks it out. On the other leg, Gane could not do it because the fence is blocking it, ultimately giving Ngannou an opportunity to fully get his back and probably fight off from there. And ultimately, all these takedown attempts and grappling exchanges started to gas out Ciryl Gane more than it was gassing out Ngannou. That was mostly because Ngannou was on top and controlling, putting his weight on top of Ciryl Gane. But that, and also the knee pads, showed that Ngannou wrestled a lot before this fight. And it's a great answer to the questions I've been having all week. So these takedowns made it difficult for Ciryl Gane to duck in and get close to Ngannou. That's something that he normally does against everybody, and he did it here as well. Ciryl Gane fought the stand-up very similar to how he goes into every single fight. Whenever things got a little bit dicey and the threatening shots came at Gane, you always see him duck down, bump into Ngannou, maybe try to clinch up with him, but what he's doing is breaking the pressure, and he knows that Ngannou usually swings wide, so it worked perfectly for Ciryl Gane. Ngannou tried to adapt with uppercuts, but Ciryl Gane was onto it, man. He was so defensively sound on the feet, and Ngannou really couldn't hit him with anything clean. Like for an example, even when Gane got into the clinch and Francis Ngannou looked to land an uppercut, Gane would do a very good job of turning away from it, using his shoulder as a guard. Or even early in the fight, he was shooting for double legs to break that pressure. Because Ciryl Gane knew from a distance that he had the clear advantage. His speed was such a big factor of the fight Ngannou really couldn't get a gauge of it. The jabs were landing on point, the front kicks, the side kicks, and just like I mentioned before, every time Gane entered, Ngannou will look for that looping left hook, but Gane would always, number one, he would just simply guard. He usually would have his right hand up when he's entering distance, blocking the punch on time, or he would squeeze in, bump inside close on Ngannou, making the wide shot miss. And even sometimes if he had the distance correctly measured, he could just disengage and lengthen it by pulling away. But Ciryl Gane did not pull as much as other fighters do. Notice what he does sometimes. For an example, when Ngannou is aggressive and he's throwing his shots from open space, you never see Ciryl Gane lean away. You always see him hop back, rear foot first, so he never gets himself out of position where an extended 1-2 combination can catch him at the end. Moving in the way he does, it allows him to continue his footwork in a fluid pattern. And this is actually something that a lot of fighters do not do in the sport. But the fascinating thing about Ciryl Gane were his feints in the fight. Constant feigning would draw out reactions from Ngannou, mostly punches, sometimes even full combinations. But it was kind of sad to see that Gane didn't really use those openings to much effect. He would just continue his whole game plan of poking at a distance with the jabs and front kicks and stuff, instead of actually using those feints to capitalize on those openings that he saw before. There was one meaningful feint where he did capitalize, but for like 90% of them, he kind of just let him go. And that one example was Ciryl Gane hand trapping would lift Ngannou's lead knee, planting Ngannou in space, and this opens up a front kick to the body. And ultimately, that's the end of the breakdown. This was a very close fight. It was great to see Francis Ngannou's evolution, and I'm very curious as to what he does after this. Does he continue in the UFC or does he go to boxing? Him coming off a win here against Ciryl Gane is going to strengthen his leverage on doing what he wants to do next. So I am very curious if he's going to take the offer with Tyson Fury. I mean, he's going to make a lot more money in that kind of fight. He's going to get more exposure if he wants to continue MMA afterward, and losing to Fury does nothing wrong to him, right? Let's say he goes and fights Fury and he loses. Whatever happens, when he makes his return to the UFC, his next fight is going to be even bigger because more people know who he is. And with that kind of star power, he can negotiate for higher pay. Or Dana is going to accept his offer for him to get higher pay so he can continue his career in the UFC, because I don't think they want a guy like him to just leave the sport. So I'm curious to see what happens next. If Ngannou doesn't stay in MMA, let's say he goes to boxing, then you have to do Ciryl Gane versus Stipe for the belt. It will make the heavyweight division look somewhat lackluster, given the fact that both those guys just lost to Ngannou, but it would be the next step up. And as for Ciryl Gane, I mean, he's still young in the sport. That was his 11th fight professionally. I mean, he has so much more growth. He's not getting hurt in his fights. He's not suffering any kind of damage. Only thing about this Ngannou fight was for him to learn. And most guys who go up against Ngannou do not come out unscathed, unless you're Derek Lewis, of course. That was a masterful fight of patience. So I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown, and if you did, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.